The opening scene of Vanished in the Fog sets the eerie and unsettling tone for the entire film, immersing the audience in the central mystery from the very beginning. The sequence unfolds in a small, fog-shrouded coastal town where the thick mist rolls in from the sea, blurring the line between reality and memory. Two young girls, Helen and her best friend Rachel, are playing near the jagged cliffs, their laughter cutting through the quiet, damp air. The cinematography emphasizes the isolation of the location, the crashing waves below, the skeletal trees bending in the wind, and the ever-present fog that seems to swallow sound and light. Rachel, the more adventurous of the two, dares Helen to follow her closer to the cliff's edge, teasing her for being afraid. There's a sense of innocence in their game, but also an underlying tension. The camera lingers on Helen's hesitation, suggesting something isn't quite right. Suddenly, Rachel runs ahead, disappearing into the fog. Helen calls after her, but there's no answer, only silence. Panic sets in as Helen stumbles through the mist, her voice growing more desperate. The sound design amplifies the dread, the distant cry of gulls, the whisper of wind, the unsettling absence of Rachel's voice. Then, in a chilling moment, Helen trips over Rachel's abandoned scarf, its bright color stark against the gray landscape. She looks around wildly, but Rachel is gone, vanished without a trace. The scene cuts abruptly to search parties combing the cliffs with flashlights, their beams cutting weakly through the fog. Helen, wrapped in a blanket, watches numbly as adults exchange hushed, worried words. The police question her, but she can't give them any answers, only the haunting certainty that Rachel didn't just wander off. Something, or someone, took her. This opening masterfully establishes the film's core themes: loss, guilt, and the unreliability of memory. The fog acts as both a literal and metaphorical barrier, obscuring the truth just as Helen's childhood trauma has buried the full story of what really happened that day. The abruptness of Rachel's disappearance leaves the audience as unsettled as Helen, priming them for the slow unraveling of secrets that will follow. The scene's unresolved tension lingers, ensuring that Rachel's ghost, both literal and figurative, will haunt every frame of the story to come. The film Vanished in the Fog begins with an atmosphere thick with unease, as if the coastal town itself is holding its breath. The camera glides over the mist-laden cliffs, the gray sky pressing down like a suffocating blanket. The sound of distant waves crashing against the rocks is rhythmic yet ominous, setting a tone that is both melancholic and foreboding. We meet young Helen and Rachel, two girls on the cusp of adolescence, their friendship a bright spot in an otherwise muted world. Rachel, wild and free-spirited, moves with an energy that seems to defy the heaviness of the fog, while Helen, more cautious, watches her with a mix of admiration and apprehension. Their dynamic is immediately clear. Rachel leads, Helen follows. As they play near the cliffs, the cinematography emphasizes the danger lurking just beyond their innocence. The camera angles are slightly tilted, creating a sense of instability, while the fog swirls around them like a living thing, sometimes obscuring Rachel from view for just a second too long. There's a moment where Rachel turns to Helen, her face half hidden in the mist, and grins, a flash of teeth that feels almost predatory in hindsight. Then, the pivotal moment. Rachel darts ahead, her laughter echoing strangely, as if the fog is distorting sound itself. Helen hesitates, her instincts warning her not to follow, but loyalty, or is it fear of being left behind, pushes her forward. She calls Rachel's name, but the fog swallows her voice. The camera stays tight on Helen's face as realization dawns. Rachel isn't answering. The search that follows is a nightmare in slow motion. The adults' flashlights cut weak, yellow paths through the gloom, their voices hushed as if speaking too loudly might summon something unspeakable. Helen, wrapped in a too-big coat, stares at the spot where Rachel vanished, her expression a mix of confusion and dawning horror. The police ask questions, but their words sound distant, muffled. Everything feels muffled in this town, smothered by secrets. And then, the final gut punch. Rachel's scarf, caught on a jagged rock, fluttering like a ghost in the wind. Helen reaches for it, but a hand pulls her back, an adult, telling her it's evidence now. The scarf is bright red, the only vivid color in the entire sequence, a visual scream in the muted palette of the fog. It's the last trace of Rachel, and its unnatural brightness feels like a taunt. The scene fades to black, but the echo of Rachel's laughter lingers, leaving the audience with a question that will haunt the entire film. Was she taken, or did she choose to disappear? This opening isn't just a setup, it's a promise. The fog isn't just weather, it's a metaphor for the obfuscation of truth, for the way trauma clouds memory. And Helen, now alone, will spend the rest of the story fighting to see through it. The film cuts abruptly from the ghostly echoes of childhood to the sharp, sterile reality of adulthood. Helen, now a journalist hardened by years of chasing other people's tragedies, stands at the edge of her father's grave. The cemetery is draped in the same coastal fog that swallowed Rachel decades ago, as if the past refuses to loosen its grip. Her hands clutch the funeral program too tightly. Her father's face stares up from the paper, a man she both loved and feared, now gone without answering the questions that have gnawed at her for years. The house she inherits is a time capsule of unresolved grief. The front door creaks open with a sound too much like a child's whimper, and the air inside is thick with dust and the faint scent of her father's pipe tobacco, a smell that makes her flinch. The camera lingers on her hesitant steps, the way her fingers trail over the wallpaper, peeling at the edges like a scab she can't stop picking. A childhood photograph of her and Rachel sits crooked on the mantel. Helen straightens it with a trembling hand, then yanks her fingers back as if burned. The town hasn't changed, but its welcome is icy. At the local diner, the clatter of dishes dies when she walks in. Faces turn away too quickly. The waitress, now middle-aged, once a classmate, drops her coffee with a clatter, muttering, "Didn't think you'd ever come back." Even the weather feels complicit. The fog presses against the windows, a living thing watching her. Then the first true confrontation. Daniel, Rachel's brother. He's no longer the lanky boy she remembers, but a hardened man with shadows under his eyes. Their exchange is a minefield of half-finished sentences and loaded pauses. "You look like him," Daniel says, and it's not a compliment. The accusation hangs between them. Your father, your blood, your fault. When Helen asks if he ever searched for Rachel after the police gave up, his laugh is hollow. Some things don't want to be found. That night, the house groans around her. Helen digs through her father's desk like a woman possessed, her breath coming too fast. And then, there. A drawer sticks, then gives way with a splintering crack. Inside, nestled between old bills and yellowed receipts, is a map of the cliffs, a spot circled in red ink so faded it looks like bloodstain. Outside, the wind howls. Somewhere in the dark, a child's laughter dances just beyond the edge of hearing. The wheels of Helen's rental car crunch over gravel as she navigates the serpentine coastal road, the same route she swore she'd never travel again. The fog here doesn't lift, It breathes, expanding and contracting like the lungs of some slumbering beast. When her childhood home looms into view, the Victorian architecture seems to recoil at her presence, its gabled windows glinting like wary eyes. She enters without knocking. The door is unlocked, because in this town, locks never kept out what truly wanted in. The foyer smells of mildew and something sweetly rotten beneath the pine-scented cleaner. Her father's housekeeper, Mrs. Peabody, has left a casserole on the table with a note in shaky cursive, "For your grief." The aluminum foil reflects Helen's face back at her, distorted, stretched thin. Upstairs, her old bedroom has been preserved like a museum exhibit. Stuffed animals still crowd the bed, their button eyes gleaming with accusation. When she opens the closet, a cascade of childhood drawings spills out, crude crayon sketches of two stick-figure girls holding hands beneath a yellow sun. The most recent one, half-finished, shows the second girl being swallowed by jagged black lines. Helen's fingers come away dusty. Helen doesn't find the clues. They find her. The morning after her bathwater turns to ice, she discovers the first one stuck to the bottom of her coffee mug, a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, the edges softened by decades of nervous handling. Local girl vanishes. Police suspect foul play. Rachel's school photo smiles up at her, frozen in perpetual innocence. The article is riddled with ellipses, where sentences have been cut away, as if someone took scissors to the truth. Her father's study is a shrine to unfinished business. The desk drawer sticks when she tries to open it, not from disuse, but from being opened too often, the wood warped from sweat and tension. Inside, beneath a ledger of fishing quotas, her father's cover business, she finds Rachel's diary. The lock is broken, but the pages are pristine, as if someone read them repeatedly yet handled them with reverence. The final entry is a gut punch. Met H at the cliffs tomorrow. He says we can leave this place forever, but first I have to show him where the bad things are buried. The handwriting grows jagged on the last sentence, the pencil nearly tearing through the paper. Helen's hands shake, because H could be her father, or it could be her. The town archives smell of mildew and resignation. The microfilm machine whirs like a dying insect as Helen scrolls through the weeks following Rachel's disappearance. A headline leaps out. Search suspended after 30 days. But it's the photo that stops her breath, her father in the background, face contorted not in grief, but rage. And beside him, a blurred figure in a police uniform, who now sits across from her at the diner counter, retired, but still wearing his service revolver like a wedding ring. When she asks about the search, his coffee cup clatters against the saucer. Some tides don't bring things back, girl. His eyes flick to her left hand. She's unconsciously clutching Rachel's diary in her death grip. That night, the wind screams through the eaves. Helen follows the sound to the attic, where a loose floorboard gives way beneath her weight. The hollow space beneath cradles a cigar box. Inside, a single pearl earring, Rachel's from her 7th grade recital, a ferry ticket dated the day after the disappearance, and a Polaroid that makes Helen vomit onto the insulation. The photo shows Rachel's backpack, half buried in the tidal mudflats. But it's the hands in the corner of the frame, one adult, one child's, that tell the real story. The adult hand wears her father's signet ring. The child's wears Helen's favorite friendship bracelet. Helen doesn't sleep that night. The pearl earring glints on her nightstand like a dead eye, watching as she pores over the diary under the sickly glow of her phone light. The more she reads, the more the words rearrange themselves into something monstrous. Rachel's entries start as typical adolescent musings, crushes on teachers, petty fights with her mother, dreams of escaping this suffocating fishbowl of a town. But then the tone shifts. The handwriting becomes erratic. The sentences fragmented. H says it's the only way. He's right. I've seen what's under the floorboards. The caves beneath Eagle Point exhale a damp, metallic breath as Helen picks her way across the jagged rocks, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The tide is out, revealing a stretch of sand littered with seaweed and the occasional beer can. Modern artifacts that seem obscenely out of place in this primal setting. Then she sees it. A scrap of fabric, faded but unmistakable. The same floral pattern Rachel wore in the last photo ever taken of her. It's wedged between two rocks, as if placed there deliberately. When Helen tugs it free, something clatters to the ground. A rusted locket, its hinge broken. Inside, a tiny photograph has fused to the metal with salt and time, but the faces are still visible. Rachel and Helen's father, not smiling, not posing, arguing. The memory unlocks, like a coffin. Helen's knees give way as the suppressed memory floods back. That night, the shouting from the cliffs, her father's voice raw with panic. "You don't understand what you're playing with!" Rachel's reply, fierce and unafraid. "I'll tell everyone about the bones in the lighthouse." Then the sound, the terrible wet sound, and the fog swallowing everything. She had buried it so deep, her child's mind rewriting the horror as a nightmare. But the locket is real. The truth is real. The abandoned coastal lighthouse stands sentinel on the far point, its beam extinguished decades ago. The door groans open to reveal steps spiraling downward, not up. The basement isn't on any blueprint. The first thing Helen notices is the smell, not decay, but bleach. Overpowering, chemical. The second thing, the marks on the walls. Not scratches, names, dozens of them, carved into the concrete in childish handwriting. The oldest dates back to 1962. The most recent reads, Rachel, 1994, followed by a shaky, "Help me," that trails off like a fading heartbeat. In the corner, a rusted metal box contains Polaroids. Each one shows a different girl posing on the cliffs. Smiling in the first photo, gone in the next. The final revelation, a sound from above. Footsteps. Daniel stands in the doorway, his face a mask of grief and fury. "You were never supposed to come back." The cop, not just covering for Helen's father, participating. The ferry tickets were never for escape, they were trophies. The fisherman, not just turning a blind eye, disposing. The caves were the dumping ground. "She was going to the media," Daniel chokes out. "Your dad couldn't let that happen." Helen stumbles backward, her hand closing around a rusted pipe. The last thing she sees before swinging is the look on Daniel's face. Not anger. The storm rolls in at dawn. By the time the police arrive, the tide has reclaimed the lighthouse basement. Helen stands at the cliffs where it all began, Rachel's locket in her hand. The town below buzzes with activity. News vans, detectives, families of the missing finally getting answers. And whose childish handwriting carved those names? After the girls were already gone. The fog creeps in as Helen opens her palm. The locket plummets, vanishing into the mist. Helen's breath comes in ragged gasps as Daniel slumps against the lighthouse wall, blood trickling from his temple. The pipe in her hand shakes, not from guilt, but from the seismic shift of everything she thought she knew collapsing around her. "It wasn't just him," Daniel spits, his voice thick with decades of poison. "Your father was the last in a long line." He reaches into his jacket. Helen raises the pipe, but he pulls out a photograph. The town's founding families, 1921, standing before this very lighthouse, and in their hands, ropes and chains. "We keep the tourists coming," Daniel laughs wetly. "The charming disappearances. The local legends. You think your journalism career was an accident? They pushed you toward it, needed someone to keep writing the myth." Helen's mind fractures as she realizes the pattern. Every 12 years, a girl vanishes, the town mourns, the headlines flare, the economy, the haunted tours, the true crime books, the documentaries, her role, unwitting scribe of their horror, giving them the perfect cover, authenticity, the ultimate betrayal. Daniel's phone lights up with an incoming call. The contact name freezes Helen's blood. "Mrs. Whitaker, Phase 3 star." The teacher's voice crackles through the speaker. "Daniel? Is it done? The film crew arrives tomorrow. We need the new cliffside evidence planted before." Helen smashes the phone against the wall. The pipe clatters to the ground as she staggers back, finally understanding the Polaroid's true purpose. Not trophies, properties. The fog's final trick. As police sirens wail in the distance, Helen realizes the horrifying symmetry. Rachel had discovered the conspiracy. Helen's father tried to stop it and was silenced. She was groomed to perpetuate it. The lighthouse door bursts open. Flashlights blind her. A familiar voice booms. "Helen! Thank God we found you!" Chief Henderson steps forward, arms outstretched. His uniform is spotless. His smile is warm. Behind him, camera crews jostle for position. Live at 11. Breaking news. Journalist uncovers decades-old mystery in haunting return to hometown. As the chief pulls her into a rescuing embrace, his whisper slithers into her ear. "You've given us our best season yet." Over his shoulder, Helen sees Mrs. Whitaker adjusting a child's hair ribbon, the same pattern Rachel wore that day. The girl turns, smiling for the cameras. Identical dimples, same crooked front tooth. Impossible. The fog rolls in as the cameras flash, fade to black. Helen's scream is lost in the cacophony of camera shutters and shouted questions. The chief's grip on her arm is ironclad, his smile never wavering as he guides her toward the waiting news vans. But just as they reach the edge of the cliffside crowd, the ground trembles, not from an earthquake, but from something deep beneath the lighthouse. A sound like 100 voices whispering at once rises from the earth. The revelation. Every 12 years, the town doesn't just fake a disappearance. They sacrifice someone to something that lives below. She wasn't murdered to hide the conspiracy. She was chosen to feed whatever dwells in the caves. She was never the investigator. She was always the next offering. The crowd panics as the lighthouse cracks down the middle, its beam flickering to life for the first time in decades, not with light, but with a sickly, pulsing glow. The cameras keep rolling, the reporters now screaming not in fear, but in rapture. Mrs. Whitaker steps forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You were right about one thing, Helen. The fog does breathe." From the fissure in the earth, something rises. Not Rachel, not a monster, but thousands of shimmering strands, like mist given sentience. They wrap around the chief first. His body contorts, his uniform dissolving as his skin turns translucent, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. The townsfolk don't run. They kneel. Helen stumbles back, but the fog is everywhere now, tendrils coiling around her ankles. The last thing she sees before it takes her is the film crew adjusting their lenses, their faces melting into something older. Not a cover-up, but a ritual. The town exists to feed an ancient hunger. Helen was allowed to uncover the truth because the entity wants its victims to understand. Fear tastes better that way. As the fog swallows her, The cameras capture her transformation, not into a victim, but into the next Mrs. Whitaker, her eyes glossing over with centuries of compliance. A new missing poster slapped over Rachel's faded one. Helen's face stares back. The date reads today. Behind the corkboard, a child's laughter echoes, not from the past, but from beneath the floor. Roll credits. A podcast plays over a black screen. And that's why I believe the town of Black Hollow isn't just hiding something. It is the hiding place. The host's voice is unmistakable. Helen's. The episode title flashes. Vanished in the Fog, Part 13. A knock at the recording studio door. Ready for your next assignment? Asks Chief Henderson's voice, repaired, rejuvenated. Helen smiles. Always. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.